Good afternoon, colleagues, and I hope you're well and that the new year has started well for you. My name is Mercy Okiro, an advocate of the High Court, and I'll be the one moderating today's CPD. Today we are looking at professional life with a specific focus on examining the work-life balance in Kenya. Our speaker is known to most of us, but I will quickly say a few things about the speaker. Mr. Kiragu Kimani, Senior Counsel, is a partner at Denton's HHM. He has over 30 years experience in constitutional matters, tax litigation, procurement disputes, ADR, real estate litigation, commercial litigation, and also dispute resolution generally. He has handled complex energy and tax disputes and represents multinational firms, local firms, and departments of the government of Kenya, and has been consistently recognized by various legal directories, including Chamber and Partners, and also has been awarded the International Law Office Client Choice Award as the best litigation lawyer in Kenya. His profile is quite extensive, and he asked me not to delve into that and eat into the time for his presentation. So I will refer you to the website and his LinkedIn profile, Denton's HHM. And I look forward to having a very fruitful conversation this afternoon. I will request attendance. Kindly, you do not have to post your P105 number in the chat, because once you've registered for this webinar and you're online, your details will be captured by the CPD committee, and your points will be assigned to you accordingly. Further, if you have any questions, to avoid mixing, put them in the Q&A section. You can use your name, or you can do it anonymously. I will fill the questions after the presentation. By way of introduction, I'd like to just read a paragraph, and then I will invite our speaker. Lawyers face challenges in their work, including but not limited to long hours, stress, disruptive new technologies, a competitive profession and job market, clients' reluctance to pay lawyers, and assumptions about their character. There's debate amongst legal professions around whether lawyer work-life balance is achievable, or what that even means. Lawyers are notorious for their long hours and demanding workload. A 2018 study found that 75% of lawyers frequently or always work outside of business hours, and 39% of lawyers say that those extended hours have taken a toll on their personal lives. Today's speaker will examine that topic of work-life balance in Kenya, especially in the legal profession. He will share his personal experiences. He may also give us his advice, having practiced law for decades, so that we can see what to borrow, and also we can share our experiences and see how we can improve in this area. I'd like to welcome Mr. Kiragu Kimani, SC, at this juncture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mercy. Good afternoon, colleagues. When I was first invited by the CPD committee to speak about work-life balance, I thought they must have the wrong person, because I'm probably least qualified to speak about the subject. Upon reflection, however, I thought, well, maybe from my mistakes, from my journey, I may be able to help some people, at whatever stage of their career, better navigate these waters. Before I get into the presentation itself, I just want to mention what I will be talking about. I'll be talking about the what, that is, what is work-life balance, and the how, which is my 2 cents about how to achieve it, and the why, which is the justification, as our training teaches us to always find the rationale for things that we do. And one of the things that surprised me, as well, not entirely surprising though, I have to confess, as I was preparing my presentation, was that lawyers, or a career in law is almost a guarantee that you will face some serious challenges in trying to achieve a work-life balance. So, you start with one hand tied behind your back, because the nature of our work, whether in practice or in the corporate sector, is that it isn't an 8 to 5 affair. It rarely ever is. You're probably only second to doctors for being on call. whether you are a commercial practitioner or a litigator, whether you are a criminal lawyer, whether you are, a civil litigator, it doesn't matter. There will be times when you are called upon to frequently work outside what you would call the normal hours. And things just got a little more complicated with the COVID-19 pandemic because, work or office home hours just got blurred. The boundaries got blurred. They've also gotten blurred by changes in technology, social media, emails. People expect you to respond almost instantaneously. But let's get the show on the road. Let's just immediately try and, I want to start by just asking you, when you have a little time, to pose these questions to yourself, just ask yourself, are you happy with your current work hours? Too few, too many? Is your job the beginning and end of everything at the expense of your personal life? Or is your family the priority, way out of proportion over your work? How much sleep do you get on weekdays, working days? And if you were to try and strike a balance, what would you do, looking at your own situation? And for many lawyers, I keep telling people, you have to ask yourself, what does rest and relaxation mean? And I don't, for many people, it means it's Friday night, party, don't stop. But, you have to ask yourself seriously, what does rest and relaxation mean? Does it mean reading a good book? Does it mean watching a great movie? Does it mean going for a hike? Does it mean joining a running club? Does it mean whatever it is? You have to ask yourself this question. Now, we can move to the next slide, please. Now, Dennis Van Heijden is an entrepreneur who was being interviewed when he made this statement. He'd just gone through a divorce, and he suddenly realized that I have been very successful as a businessman, but in the course of it, I have literally lost my spouse and maybe well on the way to losing my children. So, it's something that we have an opportunity to take stock and not think about, crying over spilled milk. You can do something about it here and now, and I like the little caption there because it may be an extreme, but from time to time you will realize that you mix up things. Why? Because you are so work focused. You have no idea even what your children's names are. As I said, a little extreme, but sometimes you need a jolt to remind you that you should try and be a balanced human being. We could move on. Next slide, please. So what's this animal called a work-life balance? It's simply a recognition that, we all ideally want to be balanced human beings, you can't be all work. You can't be all family. For us to be, fulfilled as human beings, our work is important, but so are our families. But each one of us is different. Like I often say, every human being is a unique bag of values, so that there isn't a one size fits all. You will always be called upon to determine what is it that works for me. If we could move on, please. The question is, why should we do it? Why should we have some equilibrium? One of the things you'll discover is your all work is going to get to you. It may take a year, it may take 5 years. If you're lucky, it could take 2 decades. It may take 3 years. Ultimately, It'll get your health. You will wake up one day and, like Dennis van der Heijden, realize that your wife's gone, your husband's gone, your children don't recognize you. So your sense of fulfillment will be gone. You may have been used to the applause for all the great transactions you've undertaken as a commercial lawyer. You may be basking in the glory of being top general counsel. At the end of the day, you will be left alone, and you will realize work isn't all that it was made out to be. Flip it. If you are all fun and family and putting in very few hours, over time you will realize that you can't really hold a candle to your peers, and you will find that you have little to talk about with your peers and others because they have a balance. They can talk about work. You can only talk about family. You can only talk about socials. So it's critical that we understand this. And remember, if you have a balance, then you are going to be more productive. If you have a good balance, you're going to be, your relationships will improve, both at work and at home. If you're able to rest and socialize well, you'll be a more productive human being at work. So who's responsible for achieving a work-life balance? And if I just pause here before I look at this, I think it's important that we are honest, and we should always acknowledge that it's not just an employer thing. It's a two-way street. There is you, and when I talk about an employer, I recognize that there are many of us who are not employed but are in private practice, running your own firms, but you are answerable to your clients, you're responsible to your staff, so you know you belong to some institution. So I like to look at this as the dual responsibility as the institution and the individual. Now, human beings, it's always easy for us to point a finger at the third party. So I'll start with the institution and then wind up with the individual. If we could move on, please. So what are the responsibilities of the institution? These come in three different packages. The first one is that every employer is obliged, forget the legal requirements, to create a healthy work environment. Why? People are productive if they work in a place where they're comfortable. People give their best when they are relaxed. Even when they're in stressful situations, it's a lot more comfortable being stressed in the presence of people who you perceive to be more friends than enemies, in the presence of people who may not be your friends, but who respect you as a professional. The other category is the responsibility of the employer or the institution you're associated with to help in improving relationships. And this is achieved by having team building activities. Now, a lot of people believe team building is going out of town and then, going paintballing, going on hikes, having picnics. All those are important, but there are many, many permutations of this. You could very easily have a book club amongst colleagues at work. You could have a chess club. You might have an exercise class, a running club. It's up to you to determine what activities actually bring cohesion within the team. And please always remember, it doesn't need to be labeled team building. It is whatever it is that achieves, the result. You might even have a stand-up comedy night. If you have the people, you might have a quiz night. And then finally, you have what the law requires. And that's definitely something that is not negotiable. If you could move on, please. Now, again, I always tell people, laughter is the best medicine. If you don't laugh in a couple of hours, then, you're not living, you're not enjoying your life. And I tell people you can laugh at anything, including laughing at yourself. And humor, I tell people, is rarely misplaced. There is a time and place for it, yes. But, there's always cause to laugh. You must always find cause to laugh. Okay, if we could move on. Now, really, like they say, fish rots from the head. If things are not working at the top of an institution, the top of an organization, then, it's hard to have a healthy work environment. And some of the ways you could do this is, creating the time and space for people to feel that they are giving of their best, that they are listened to, that their efforts are appreciated. COVID-19 taught us many things. One of the big things it taught us is flexible working hours and remote working or hybrid working. This is a controversial subject, both flexi hours and remote or hybrid working. I've spoken to a lot of employers. I've spoken to a lot of people who are, employees. And my experience has been that it's been a mixed bag. I think there's nothing inherently wrong with flexible working hours, of course, within limits. If you're a court lawyer, you can't get away with saying that I'm a night person, so I can't be awake at 9 a.m. Then find another line of work. But it comes down to personal responsibility and self-discipline. If you do not have self-discipline, then do not demand flexible working hours of your employer. I know a lot of people in the legal profession, a lot of employers I spoke to were very skeptical about flexible working hours. But I think one of the failings, and I am as bad as the next person in this, is that we really haven't, in many ways, developed a way of measuring output. In other industries, in other sectors, they are a lot more successful in measuring output. And we need to have our, put our house in order by ensuring that we find a way of measuring output. What is it that should be done by a first-year post-qualification associate? If they are a commercial practitioner, if they are a conveyancer, what is to be expected? How many hours should they put in which can be billed to a client? If you are not in practice, what are the tangible outputs that your employer should be able to look at? If we could move on, please. Now, these are hard. Some things are easier said than done. But again, I say it's a two-way street. I keep telling people, it used to be that people who did not go on leave for an entire year were looked at in admiration. I think that's wrong. And I learned the hard way that if you go 2 years with only 3 or 4 days off or a week off, then you're not doing yourself any favors, you're not doing your employer any favors, you're not doing your client any favors. Your capacity is always going to be diminishing. So from time to time, if you're an employer, encourage your employees to have 3 or 4 day weekends, especially take litigators, for example. You've got 3 court vacations, including one that's fairly long, the August vacation for Nairobi practitioners, and for Mombasa, I think it's a December one. Encourage people to take time off. Remember their leave days not taking a liability. Avoid touching base with employees outside working hours unless there is a genuine reason like a crisis, or you are the bearer of good news. You've gotten a good judgment and you want to appreciate the work that was put into it by your partner or your associates. Respect and show appreciation for the output of others. You know, I mean, I know I can be pretty brash in my criticism of work, but I always tell people I will also try and acknowledge when I am wrong, because sometimes you criticize work and realize later, actually, upon reflection, that person was right, I was wrong. But flip side is, don't have a glass chin. Be ready as a lawyer to take some harsh criticism, and, you know, provided that it is, you know, aimed at getting you to improve. Measuring work so that people are not stretched to the limit. I know, you know, there's always a joke about people working long hours and into the night. Many years ago, a particular bank in Kenya, if you left at 6 o'clock, there was a joke about you working half day because you were expected to be in there from morning until as late as midnight. But that, in my view, is old hat, unproductive. The question should always be, what is the output? If you've got an incredibly organized employee who is able to give you the results in a couple of hours, why would you want to insist on them being there tens of hours? But I emphasize, it's a two-way street. For the employee, you've also got to focus and consider, am I being fair to my client? Am I being fair to my employer? Am I giving a good return for the time that I say I've invested? If you could move on, please. Next slide, please. Flexible working hours I've talked about, but this is a conversation that people have to have with their immediate employers and with their employees. It's really, in my view, the future. I have seen lawyers who, you know, are clearly night owls. They will struggle during the day. In the night, they'll bombard you with draft documents. And, you know, if you have people who are productive in the night and their work, you know, is up to par, then consider flexi hours. But again, you must always ask yourself as an employee, just because I've been able to achieve a lot in 2 hours, does that mean I switch off for the rest of the day? So I'll keep going back to the subject that it's a two-way street. We could move on. Next slide, please. Hybrid working, again, a conversation that you will hear more and more about. And please, please, please think about these things. I see people, young mothers in particular, who the law allows them to be away for 3 months, or is it 4 months now? But you still see them checking in, following up on their cases. I've seen the odd situation where a nursing mother has actually gone and taken a trial, attended meetings. That's all as a result of a reasonably good working relationship. I mentioned about team building. Really, there is no fixed number of pigeonholes. It's for us as human beings to find the things that help our team grow, that help our team gel. Remember, you don't leave your house to go and turn every person at work into your best friend. But the flip side is, if you have a healthy and respectful relationship with those you work with, then the workplace is going to be a much better place. When there is unpleasant to be dealt with, it'll be a lot easier. And if you do develop friendships, why not? Provided that you respect the professional boundaries as well, always look for things that make you improve your relationships as a team. You could move on, please. Let's look at the statutory obligations, and I'll be pretty brief on this because these, as I said earlier, are non-negotiable. Next slide, please. And I think, you know, these are things that we really shouldn't dwell on. I have heard of practices or employers who expect you to check in every day of the week. You're flouting the law. Sometimes it's not even the said thing that I expect you to log in on Sundays, but you know, the workload is such that you're expected to be working every day of the week. You have your statutory 21 days annual leave. Negotiate with your employer, negotiate with your employees. If you're able to get a situation where you can take most of the leave together, trust me, it works better. Just switching off. You come back a lot more energized, totally recharged in many cases, and you know, really focus. Maternity leave and paternity leave is not something that you debate over. It's same thing with the other statutory leave periods. It's not for debate. What really we have to discuss is how do we plan? Depending on what you do, if you're a code practice, for example, you can work with the code vacations. Fortunately for us, a lot of law firms do tend to shut down over the Christmas break and people take their leave. I think that's a good thing because December, a lot of businesses are slow, families get to travel. It's important that you have this conversation. I assure you that if you have an employee who's not taken leave for 2-3 years, they are operating at below optimal level. If you're lucky, they're operating at 40% capacity. It doesn't matter how good they are. It doesn't matter what their experience is. Nobody can operate without a break. If you could move on, please. Let's now look at me, you, the person. What's your role in all of this? Because you can't just pass it to your institution. You can't just pass it to your employee. You must assume responsibility. I always tell people, even when you're hit by a car, ask yourself, do I bear any responsibility? Should I have been wearing reflective clothes? It's dark. Should I have looked for a zebra crossing before trying to cross? Whatever it is, always check whether there is a role that you have to play. But let's now, you know, do what we should do, which is own our attempts at achieving work-life balance. Have a plan. Think about how many weeks you want, how many hours you want to work, you know, in concrete. I know people who are a lot better organized than I am, who have had routines for years. Monday is my day to go to the gym. Friday is my day to go for my walk. So I knock off at exactly 5 o'clock and I put in 2 hours in the gym and I put in 2 hours walking. Wednesday evening, I have book club at 6:30. So I may work until 6 and find my way to the venue of the book club, or if it's virtual, find my way home and join. Okay, you have to have a plan, both for your work and for your socials. Huh? And remember, socials are not to be left, you know, to a random thing. Let me just show up at my local pub and see who's there. No, socials could have very many different permutations. Joining a book club and knowing what, you know, how frequently you will meet. Joining a sporting club, all right? Just having a regular catch-up session with your peers or older people. And I keep telling people it's vital to have friendships both with your peers and with young people and older people. There's nobody who's an island. Nobody has a monopoly of knowledge. If you're talking about to younger people, they are likely to be more tech savvy. They will keep helping you out in things that you're struggling with. If you're talking to older people, frequently they will have seen what your challenge is. They'll have come across it in some shape, form, or size. Your socials are not to play second fiddle. Until COVID happened, I had spent the previous 30, 31 years having lunch once a week with another lawyer who I spent 4 years with as a roommate. And you know, it was always just catching up about work, catching up about family, catching up about what's happening in the country. And I found that invaluable. You know, COVID interrupted that, but that's just one example. You have to be a good time manager. And you know, these are things that we are all different at. There are people who are very, very orderly. You know, a Roman Catholic priest who's since been canonized, Saint Jose Maria Escrivá, said, order increases time. So if you have a plan, whether it is for your socials or for your work, if you have a journal that tells you on Friday, I will work until 3 o'clock so that I can go and meet my contemporaries to find out what's going on in their lives. Then I will catch up with whatever work is done on Saturday morning if I have to do that. You have to get on top of things. You know, I was talking to our moderator earlier, Mercy Okiro, and telling her, I struggle like many people with you know, with technology, with social media. Look at phone, 10 minutes of my time. So I will try and not look at my phone and start by deciding, what do I want to do today? What is my plan? Okay. You are not going to get very far in life unless you're passionate about your work. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, ask yourself why you should continue doing it. And at every stage in life, you must keep asking yourself, if you're a court lawyer, is it still working for me? Is this what I'm doing? If you're a in-house counsel, is this working for me? Is it something I transition to something else? Try and draw boundaries between your work life and your social life. If your electricity bills and your social emails all come through your work address, then the lines get blurred. The minute you want to catch up with your friends on a Sunday morning is when you're going to come across the annoying emails on our court case coming the next day, telling you that I will not be proceeding with the case after you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. We seem to have a technical hitch involving our speaker, but I know he'll be back shortly. So kindly, we apologize for that. We will be back shortly, but kindly do not log out. This is one of the downsides of using internet. So kindly wait for a minute.
Sorry, I don't know what happened and I dropped out. Let me just, I'm in with a different gadget. Sorry, let me just leave with the first one. Sorry about that. Let's just try and pick up. So yeah, if we could move to, yes, I think this is where I was at. Pick up hobbies. If you are all about work and all you talk about is work, you're not going to be great company. Please pick up a hobby. It doesn't matter at what stage in life. You could start collecting stamps in your old age. Huh? You could start enjoying, photography in your youth or at any stage of life. find something to do outside work. If we could move to the next slide, please. Let me just ask very quickly whether, and I don't know why anybody needs to justify having a work-life balance, because as I said earlier, it leads to increased productivity. I can tell when I've had an intense weekend, the following week, I'm not going to be up to scratch. No matter what you experience, you will be playing below par. Improved physical and mental health because of having the appropriate balance means your stress is better managed, okay? And the ultimate result is better personal and professional relationships. But most importantly, it avoids something that is increasingly common. I have a friend who's a surgeon, and every so often I will ask him, who's about my age, I will ask him, so what's going on in your space? And over the last 5 years, what that he has consistently told me is that the age of people he is seeing, with heart conditions, who've suffered heart attacks, who've suffered strokes, is dropping every year. And surprise, surprise, some of the worst offenders, lawyers, bankers, and doctors themselves. Doctors apparently do not practice what they preach often. If we can move to the next slide. Next slide, please. So now, I'm not going to walk you through this because we all have some idea what stress is. The only reason I put this on the slides is because it is something that is the enemy of your professional life, is the enemy of your social life. If we're stressed out, if we suffer burnout, then we are never going to achieve fulfillment unless we address these things. Each one of us knows what your stresses are. The question is, what are you going to do about it? It doesn't matter how unpleasant your institution is, how unpleasant, how difficult your employer is. You owe it to yourself to constantly engage in saying, I don't think I feel so good. I need to take time off. I need different responsibilities. You have no value to everyone or to anyone for that matter if you are not enjoying optimum health. If we could move to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. The usual humor, we can skip that, please. Now, what are the things that stand in the way of our achieving work-life balance? And these are the things that, we must all be on the lookout for. As you grow, as your skill sets improve, inevitably you'll find your responsibilities at work go up. Sometimes it's not even as a consequence of improved or increased skill sets. It's as a result of people moving along and you finding yourself with more on your plate. It's as a result of a promotion, a sudden promotion. Long work hours, are a serious impediment to achieving a work-life balance. Increased responsibilities on the home front, whether it's as a result of having children or, getting into a family business that requires you to commit time, whatever it is going to be a challenge when it comes to achieving work-life balance. Poor time management, and here I am as bad as many people. You must try and have some order. I try and have a fortnightly to-do list. Then I try and have a daily to-do list. Probably, I'm far too ambitious, much than too little. And I cut myself some slack if I haven't covered everything. I still want to check in it to achieve. And you have to take stock every day. You have to audit yourself on a daily basis. Have an examination at the end of the day, whether at home or at your desk in the office. Just always check, have I been accountable to my clients, whoever they are, whether it's external clients or internal clients? Have I been accountable to myself? Have I actually worked? Look out for the time wasters, the coffee dates, the unnecessary meetings. Always ask yourself, do we need to have a meeting? What is the agenda? What is the expected output? We could move to the next slide. Right, now, let me just give you an overview before I take questions. In 35 years of working in the same place, I think I spent the first decade, maybe the first, having very little time off. Terrible mistake. But don't cry over spilled milk. I look back and say, I probably was able to do a lot of things that my contemporaries hadn't been able to do professionally. But that's a poor excuse for not giving yourself time to relax. And remember, we don't travel the same path. There'll be people who will have families when they're very young. There'll be people who will have families when they're middle-aged. There'll be people who they also achieving this, or vice versa. What are icons? We don't. Everybody has their own. I am at a stage in myself. My year is the reason for not them in that year. I tell people, find something to do. People tell me, I'll not take time off because my work will pile up and I will just come and get more stress when I am back, or I don't have the money to travel. Who said you have to travel? Just walk around where you live. And please don't make excuses. Don't say we don't all live in the leafy suburbs. There has to be something you can see. There has to be an art gallery you can walk to. There has to be a local church you can go to and find out, can I join the choir? Can I admire their stained glass windows? Look around. What trees are there? What bird life is there? Things that I never had time to notice, I now enjoy. I take pictures of flowers on my phone everywhere I go. I think for me, the most important feature for a telephone now is a camera. Taking pictures and walking outdoors. You owe it to yourself to be the best you can professionally, and while at it, to enjoy your social life to the limit. I find that as lawyers, we have extremes. There are people who are all work, and there are people who are all party. There's a halfway house. You can enjoy both sides of the divide. So, you always have to look at the components of your work-life balance. On the work side, you've got your career and you've got your job. And remember, they're not synonymous. Your career is not your job. Your job is your current engagement. On the social family, you've got friends, and you've got yourself as an individual. A lot of times we lose the way because we are only thinking about our friends or family. You don't think about yourself. What's healthy? The friends that you keep may be unhealthy. Your family
may be unhealthy and you need to rethink things. So ask yourself today, tomorrow, and always, first, am I sold on to the idea of achieving work-life balance? Two, how can I achieve work-life balance? And there's no one size fits all. Three, take stock. What have I done today? There's no point having a 16-hour day today, a 12-hour day tomorrow, and the next 2 days you achieve nothing. Go and have a roadmap. No two ways about it. As far as possible, keep a journal. Ask yourself, last Easter, what did I do? Did I get out of town? Visit your friends, other practitioners who live in other towns. Go for CPD to other towns. Combine that. If you have CPD in Nakuru and you have a friend there, leave on Thursday, CPD on Friday, spend the weekend with your friend. Just find a way of ensuring that you are not all work and no play, or all play and no work. Ultimately, it's all about setting boundaries as an individual, as an institution, as an employer. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have the solution. You do. I wasn't even trying to suggest what you must do. It's up to you. But if you don't have a balance, sooner rather than later, your health, your fulfillment in life will suffer. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry I've taken so long.
Thank you so much, Senior Counsel. I assure you, you are right on the literally the time I gave you, you've used that time, 45 minutes. Thank you so much. Before I field the questions, I'd like just to ask, you've said something about how you worked yourself off in the first years of your career, perhaps the first 10 to 15 years. Right now, looking back at your career, what would you say perhaps is one thing you'd regret, perhaps 5 years post-admission, 10 years post-admission, in terms of your work-life balance, knowing what you know now?
Maybe a couple of things. One, I just wish I had seen more of this country. I'm trying to do that in my old age, so it's a mad rush, but I wish I had seen more of this country. I wish I had invested more time with my peers. You know, now I try and have a lot of interaction with my peers, you know, every couple of weeks, just to catch up and find out what are their experiences. I contribute more to my peer groups, whether it's my class from the university or whether it's my high school group. You know, I just feel I could have invested more time on the social end of things, but you know, I don't look back in anger. I look back and say, there's always time to catch up, and, you know, I'm trying to make the best of it now.
Awesome. Another thing, what hobbies then have you picked up in this new realization, apart from pictures of flowers? What do you do to unwind?
I've really got, you know, enjoyed hiking. I used to run, and running can be addictive. You know, owing to all sorts of injuries, I'm struggling with that. So I've taken up hiking. One of the things I've discovered is that there's always a hill around you. And there's a lot of spaces not too far from all of us where you can go out with minimal expenditure, just to enjoy the outdoors. For me, hiking is really fulfilling, and that includes your workspaces. You know, even if it's in the city center, there's always places you can walk around. There's things that you can pick up. I am trying to pick up bird watching, because COVID days I discovered that there's birds everywhere, and there's things, and I'm also trying to pick up identifying trees, things that exercise other parts of my mind. That's why I said rest doesn't just mean sleep or traveling and being on the beach. Rest means doing something other than the usual work.
Great. Now I'll field the first question, and it's from anonymous attendee. Kindly note you are also allowed to do anonymous questions. And this one I can tie with a statement perhaps. When we were getting 10 years ago, we were 10,000 lawyers at least on the roll. Now we are way past 21,000. And that brings pressure, of course, in terms of numbers. And there's a question really about how do we create healthy boundaries with clients who feel entitled to all your time just because they have paid legal fees. That is the first question. And also in light with now of the situation in terms of numbers. And yes, number two is from Wanjiru Ngige. She asks, do you think that the legal profession attracts people who naturally tend to pressure or naturally like that adrenaline of pressure? Perhaps you can take those two, then I'll field more. Thank you.
Could you just repeat Wanjiru's question again? Sorry.
She asks whether naturally you think that the legal profession then attracts people who tend to like pressure and the adrenaline rush, as it were. Thank you.
All right, let me start with Wanjiru's question. I think it depends. We are all very different. I find a lot of people who end up in litigation enjoy the adrenaline rush. So, you know, it comes with the territory. But as I've increasingly told people, maybe I'm getting too old for the job. It used to be all in a day's work, taking a judgment in an involving case. Now I get, you know, I feel the heat. But the reality is this. We may be adrenaline junkies, whether we are litigators or conveyancers or whatever. That is not an excuse for not creating time for other things. Find time to do other things. You know, I know people, one of Wanjiru's partners, Mohamed Nyaoga, you know, I know on Thursdays, for example, I can't catch him in the evening because he's going to play football, and you can't interfere with that. It's a habit that he has practiced for years. So as much as we have pressure, we have to make the time. Boundaries, one of the ways of managing things, because I understand what you're saying when you indicate that, you know, clients tell you, if you're not available, Mercy is. If Mercy is not available, there's 10 other guys. I keep telling people that maybe what we should do is start to outsource, you know, even within, if you work with other people, even if you are a sole practitioner, if you have a young associate, involve them in all your projects, especially those clearly which could have all sorts of twists and turns. And people will talk to the next person if they can't catch you. Clients will learn to understand that you may not be able to take their call because you are in court. You may not be able to take their call because you're in a meeting with the next client. But we can manage these things. We can always let people know from the get-go that if you can't catch me, you can catch Mercy. If you can't find Mercy, you can find the next person. We will be able to do these things, and you know, or you will even be able to take advantage of technology. Be creative with the out of office message. You know, I'm in a week-long arbitration. During my absence, you can catch A or B or C on these numbers. I will be available during these times, and we will find a solution. There'll always be the unreasonable client who says, I can't find you, forget about you. It's fine. Keep your sanity.
Great. Just a follow-up. As you've said, you've worked in the same place for 35 years, and we do know that perhaps that is one of the oldest firms and more structured in terms of how the operations are. I'm thinking about now sole proprietorship and the fact that lawyers straight out of admission can start firms. So more or less at the time, you're not able to afford a huge staff. So how do you balance building your firm and also perhaps still this work-life balance? Because of course, you're not the same as perhaps Dentons, as it were.
I have a couple of younger friends who are sole practitioners, and one of the things I've realized, again, one of the regrets, I probably should have stayed a lot more in touch, especially with those who I have worked with and have moved on, because you will always learn things. One of the things that I have learned, and I keep seeing it, there'll be slow periods. take advantage of the slow days. If you wake up and you do not have court and you do not have a pressing deadline, to meet on that day and the following day, that's your day. Because it's going to be a straight month or 2 months where you're working even on Sundays. So there'll always be the slower periods. Those are the days then you visit the art galleries. Those are the days that you go to Karura and spend 100 bob as your entry fees and walk around. It may not feel like much, that it's only 2-3 hours, but trust me, you will get rejuvenated enough to keep going the next month or two. Everybody can create the time. And I accept that, we are all in different situations. I was having a debate with a sole practitioner last night. It was inconclusive because what is, I think you guys have a lot more time and all of this. And I was telling him, I'm sorry, 5 years ago, I took a decision that Saturday, unless there's a crisis, is not going to be a working day. I still haven't managed Sunday, but Saturday, I decided it's not going to be a working day. So we can all come up with our roadmap. When can I take time off? It may not be as easy to plan as those who are in more structured places, but don't give up. Keep looking at what your options are.
Great, that is awesome. Before I move to the next question, I'd like to remind colleagues that there's an evaluation to assist the CPD committee to evaluate speakers and also for future reference in terms of what your requirements are in terms of training. Kindly fill that poll that has popped up on the screen. Senior Counsel, I'd like to move to the next question. There's an anonymous attendee who has a lengthy question which I'd like to ask. One of the reasons for SC, I hope we are still together.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Sorry. These are difficult times, but and there's no one solution. Every workplace will be different. The COVID-19 pandemic affected different practices differently, different industries differently, because we are not all in practice. And one of the things that I tell people you must do is look at your own situation. What's the environment, the place that you work at, and what are the situations? I know the world over, people responded to the pandemic very differently. The Northern Hemisphere that has been referred to, there were huge redundancies. I don't have any statistics, but I suspect we didn't have them here. Yes, there were pay cuts from place to place. There were wage freezes. What I think needs to be done is take stock of your own situation, engage with the person or persons or institution that you work with. The pressure of income, adequacy of income is one that will be with us for a long time. And I keep telling people, be prepared to make adjustments as an individual. Every time I want to travel, and I keep telling people one of the things I'd like to do is really travel around this country. I keep saying I wouldn't mind getting a new car, but it's not a priority. I don't think I can afford it now. So we must all be prepared to look at what is it that I want and what is it that I need. And often we, because of looking at the other side of the fence, because of looking earning 10 times as much as I am, provided that I have a certain standard of living. measure yourself against yourself. Now that may be you know, a rather superficial way in some people's view to look at it, but I'll tell you this, it's never enough. If your salary was double tomorrow, your wants will soon become your needs. Your wish to be to join the nearest private members club will soon escalate to joining the most exclusive club in the region. So be objective, look at your space and ask yourself, what can I negotiate? And what is non-negotiable? How do I live with it? Back to you, Mercy.
Thank you so much. I'll quickly segue into a comment from Deborah Ajwang, who says, these are very progressive policies. Sadly, the reality in most Kenyan companies is that we are still stuck in the old colonial mentality that work equals how long you are in the office. Many banks struggled with flexible hours during the COVID-19 pandemic until the central bank pulled out the big stick. We don't have ways of measuring productivity. And you also said that around measuring productivity. So perhaps if you could just add your thoughts and comments on that comment. Too much repetition of words there, but we move. Thank you.
No, I think Deborah makes a valid point. I'm struggling with measuring work, and you know, I've always believed people should smell the coffee. The feedback you're getting should be telling you how you're developing. I am told that's archaic and no longer acceptable, and I think it's a valid point. And you know, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to find out a 1 year post-qualification court lawyer, what can they do? 2 to 3 years, 4 to 5 years, and finding a way of telling, you know, if you tell me that it takes you 10 hours to produce a plaint for, you know, a bank loan, then I need to have a conversation with you to find out why. Are you struggling with something? Are you struggling with a particular aspect of your training? But yes, does the number of hours you're sitting in front of your screen or on your desk mean productivity? I think, you know, we all know what the answer is. Anybody who thinks that the longer you are in the office, the more productive you are is fooling themselves. I actually have no problem with people who, you know, there's somebody who's going to show up at 9 o'clock. They should be in at 8 in my office, for example. There are people who show up just before court, but their output in a couple of hours tells me that, you know, I should not gloss over the hour that we lost because you've been very productive. Yes, as a profession, especially for practitioners, I think I'm not alone in saying measuring productivity is an area we've been left far behind by a lot of industries. And you know, I see people's, as a litigator, I see people's bills of costs and the hours they say they spent on things. And I keep saying, either those hours are padded and we are robbing our clients or our opponents silly, or we are totally lacking in certain skills. Back to you, Mercy.
On to the next question by Thomas Abira. He says, great choice of topic and very useful information. Any thoughts on whether wellness generally, whether physical or mental initiatives and controls should be entrenched in law to help achieve balance in today's workforce?
I always say that in a democracy, you know, prescribing things through statutes should not be the first port of call. We should change behavior. That's what is most important. You know, I was debating. I was working with one of our trainee lawyers as I was preparing, and we were debating. I think there's a bill in Parliament about stopping employers from contacting staff after hours. And you know, my view, I told her, I mean, what a waste of the National Assembly's time, because there are things you shouldn't legislate. Bad behavior is not, if I keep calling my people at 9 o'clock in the night asking them, how far have you gone with the drafting? If I keep calling them on Sunday morning to ask them whether they are available at 1 o'clock, and if I bombard them with emails at 3 a.m., it's bad manners, not a matter for the law. And I was, my point is this: if you legislate about not being contacted outside working hours, what do you think employers will do? Their knee-jerk reaction will be, I've got to go and meet my teacher, and you'll be told, sorry, take a day off. I'm not giving you 2 hours off. How many work days are you going to take to attend funerals, to go to children's activities, to, attend to your socials? You've only got so many days. You want to go to the bank to sort out a problem, and your employer tells you, nope. The law says I am not to interfere with your your off work hours. The flip side is my hours are my hours. So we should just look to give feedback to our employers that, if you're tired, there's nothing wrong with saying, I am tired. Something is off. I am struggling with this. It's not a reflection on who you are. It is a reflection of what's going on in your life at that point in time. I mean, I have bad days when I'll tell people, I wasn't thinking when I suggested this is a solution. I think it's absolutely mad. Your solution works better. So yes, wellness is something that employers, and I am one of them, should be constantly given feedback on. But legislation, last port of call, in my view.
Okay, thank you so much. And just as a follow-up, perhaps we're now aware that alcohol use has also been identified even by the government of Kenya through the various policies as one of the issues that is rampant in the workforce. And therefore nowadays, summary dismissal in government, as per government policy, does not really become the consequence of perhaps being seen to have alcohol abuse. Instead, there's a redirection towards rehab, counseling, and such other interventions, so that summary dismissal or anything similar, an adverse consequences later. Do you really think that the legal profession is ready to embrace such a conversation, given that use of alcohol and drugs has been one of the issues that have been seen to be rampant in the profession?
It's a subject that that invites strong views from many different ways. On the one hand, an alcohol abuse is a complicated subject because a lot of times people don't understand that it's an illness like your malaria and, like cancer or like diabetes, or, people believe that it's a habit. It's just a bad habit and you just need to shake it off. The alcohol dependency, if you've ever interacted with people who suffer that, you will realize it's a lot more complex than that. But having said that, the resources of employers are not infinite. It's difficult to, expect that employers will be able to carry the burden entirely of rehabilitation and all kinds of other treatment that are required. I think what we can do as a profession more and more, and there's no shame in this, is to have more groups. One of the things that I have increasingly heard from, especially from younger lawyers, is something called mentorship. And for the longest time I struggled to understand, what are you talking about? Now I realize all they're simply saying is that it's something that I've enjoyed with older lawyers and older non-lawyers. It's just somebody to bounce things off, somebody to have conversations with, and you benefit from their wisdom and experience. I think we need to have more groupings, including if we need that, some sort of alcohol and drug abuse group. I know there's stigma, and I know there'll be few volunteers probably, but we watch people degenerate and soon they are no longer able to function, or they are not with us at all. What's the place of the employer? I think as far as possible, if they can offer support whether it's in taking people for counseling or whether it's in allowing people to work in a place that is safe. Because remember, if you are, for example, and I'm using the word detained, confined in a rehabilitation center, doesn't mean you can't function, doesn't mean you can't attend meetings, doesn't mean you can't attend court. If you are, as employers, we can support such initiatives. If you've been a good worker and you take sick, it's not different from cancer. How can we accommodate your situation, supporting you? But it's a complicated subject. I don't think I've got all the answers, and I don't even know what the magnitude of the problem is. Yes, I do see behavior in online court that tells me that people didn't get much sleep the night before, but I don't know enough to be able to express a very clear view. I have seen people I've interacted with, worked with, really their productivity go down, but I couldn't put a finger to it until they were no longer with us, that I realized, or when I asked around, I was told they were hitting the bottle hard. We need to talk more about it. We need to discuss it. And that's why I tell people, I now have a problem socializing with people you work with every so often, so that you can see how we behave in certain environments. You will observe things, and people will observe things about you as well. Back to you, Mercy.
Thank you so much. I've requested to have an extra just 5 minutes so that we can finish up with the questions. I'll quickly ask, there's a question for Patrick Miner, who thanks you for the insightful presentation. How do we best manage our retirement journey as legal practitioners? Perhaps you can answer this from your own personal experience, because I do not deem you to be a financial advisor. Thank you, SC.
Two things. There's two aspects to this, and one of them is valid, the financial aspects. One of the things that we should all try and do is to have a little leg nest, and you can do this. NSSF is as controversial a subject, as much maligned as it is. It's better to have some money somewhere than none at all. But there's a lot of independent pension and provident funds. There's a lot of little places that you could set aside money. People always say that it's I don't make enough to set aside money. You can always set aside a little money. All of these investment plans from people like Old Mutual, ICA, Lion, Sanlam, Britam will take small sums, and haba na haba hujaza kibaba. You just have to keep stashing away a little money, and it doesn't exist for you. Join the LSK SACCO and put away a little money. Join other SACCOs. Well, be careful. There's all sorts of crooks in the SACCO world, so you have to definitely be careful about which one and where you put money aside. So the financials are one aspect of it, and I know people who have retired, and it's become evident before long that they didn't have any sort of money to fall back on. But you should always, even the financial advisors will tell you, always ask yourself, if tomorrow I wasn't working, would I be able to maintain the same lifestyle? If the answer is no, then you must ask yourself, what do I need to examine? What should I give up? Should I downgrade on my car? Should I move to less, cheaper accommodation? Should I look at what my children's school fees are? What is it that I should do? Or should I get a side hustle that doesn't interfere with my professional line to generate higher income? That's the financial end of it. The other side is no less important, which is how you keep yourself occupied. And that's, for me, something that I am still mulling over. I keep saying that if you've been working for 40, 45 years, to simply switch off one day is a sad loss for your line of work. You must find places where you can offer your skills. If you have been a practitioner, then find a way of offering services. One of the things that from talking to my younger lawyer friends, I feel is lacking is that there aren't enough people to guide you on practice management. There aren't enough people to guide people on career progression. There aren't enough people to simply teach others about human relations and how to manage the most important resource, which is the lawyers and other professionals. So money and what will I do next? It could be varied. You might retire into spending a lot more time at your mosque and offering admin services at your church. You might retire into being more active in the Rotary world, but do not switch off one day. And you know, I know people who are my contemporaries who are good for a drink any day, anytime. They've got the money, they can afford it, but that's not a healthy lifestyle. And before long, I know somebody who is no longer even fit to drive because they're consistently under the influence of the previous day's drink or the current one. So plan it. And there's no, you know, you start planning it from the first day you work. If you're able to join a cooperative society from day one, do it. If you're able to start putting aside 1,000 bob at Sanlam or Britam or whoever else, do it. It's never money that goes to waste. Back to you, Mercy.
Martin asks how to set boundaries with clients who give work during your off days or weekends when you're meant to be relaxing.
You have two choices. One, to tell people, received it, engaged now, we'll be addressing it tomorrow morning or on Monday, and waiting to see, because sometimes people are testing the boundaries. They're just testing the waters. You know, those are the clients who call you from the airport and they tell you, it's vital that I see the draft documents because I'll be airborne in an hour. And after that, I'm on holiday for the next 6 weeks. They're testing the waters. And you know, we all have to have boundaries. Yes, it's striking a balance. There will be the client who genuinely needs help on your Sunday, who genuinely needs advice at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday. And you can't just tell them, my rule of thumb is no calls after 6 p.m. If it's a genuine case, and sometimes it's hard to establish that, but if it's a genuine case, it's part of our calling. We are second to doctors. Doctors are always on call. Frequently, we get calls in the wee hours. The second thing is, even people who you know, walk away from you because they feel you are not available may find reason to come back to you because they discover ability is probably better than availability all the time. There'll be people who will be available all the time, but what they give you is garbage. But the person who's got ability will tell you, on Monday, I want to eat. And on Monday, you will spend a lot less time fixing what you have been given. Back to you, Mercy.
Thank you, Senior Counsel. I'll combine these two. There's a comment that from anonymous attendee who feels that many law firms lack empathy for their staff. Perhaps you can combine that with another anonymous attendee's comment on that. From your observation in over 30 years of practice, what your comments may be in terms of divorce amongst lawyers. Do you feel that is it as a result of the cases that we deal with, or what is it about the profession, if at all you can put a correlation with the level and the amount of divorces and the profession itself? Back to you.
I don't know that we have a higher than normal rate of divorce. That's news to me. But having said that, I think it's something I could still talk about, because one of the things I've found amongst a lot of young people I interact with is a degree of intolerance. You can't walk in and out of marriages. You think the rest of us who've been married for 30 years, it's been a bed of roses. It's difficult. Learn to put up with the hard thing. Kill emotionally. You could don't put up with gap. You don't even find one line is crossed and we are done for. Just because I can do it, I do it. You have to ask yourself, you know, why did I get married to this person in the first place? What are the pros and cons of staying in the marriage and walking away from it? And you know, it's a conversation that I engage with people from time to time when they tell me, I think I've had it with my husband, I think I've had it with my wife, and I tell them, really? Just take a deep breath and ask yourself, what's this that has happened that means the end of the world? And is it really the end of the world? But, you know, empathy for stuff, I'm willing to listen. You know, I tell people, I don't know what's going on in your life unless you tell me the next 2-3 weeks will be difficult because my mother's gone into hospital. If I know that, I will kick myself when I criticize your inability to meet deadlines next time. But it's information is a two-way street. I really would like to know I don't want the details. I don't need to know that you're struggling with in your personal relationships, whether it's with a boyfriend, girlfriend, or spouse. No, I don't need to do that. But if you tell me this is for various reasons, I don't wish to go into a difficult period for me, the question I may ask is, how can I help, or how do we navigate this? Including, and if it means take time off, let's see, how can we reassign your work? But if I don't know, I will work on the basis that we show up. The reason we turn up is because we want to perform. You know, and I tell people frequently, which is a bad habit, I'll pack my own personal problems at the door and say, I've rolled up my sleeves, it's all work, work, work. It's not the right attitude, but sometimes I find that it works because I want to focus on my work.
Awesome. Now, the last perhaps question from Grace Wambugu talks around, perhaps looks into Ikigai, really, the Japanese thing about your reason for living. And the question is that as a top successful lawyer, is it now easier to get a balance between what you love, what you're good at, what you get paid for, as you move towards perhaps Ikigai, and more importantly, what would equate to the apex of the Maslow's pyramid?
Interesting. I just drove past the restaurant called Ikigai, where I'm told people on Lower Kabete Road, a lot of people are increasingly going to work. But I think, you know, and I'm not sure I understand the concept perfectly, but I tell you what, and we are all very different. I tell people, you must try and grow to love what you do for a living, but you must grow to love what you do outside your work. Your work shouldn't define you. I have given up the fight in social places of being referred to as wakili, which used to irritate the hell out of me. I've almost given up being called senior counsel, which is another irritating thing, because you are not these titles. You are a human being, you know. And I tell people, I actually don't have a problem with calling me by my first name, because respect isn't spoken. Respect is in me listening to what you're saying and responding to it appropriately, even when I disagree with it. I always tell people, in my court experience, is that those who start by referring to me as eminent senior counsel when I'm arguing things against them end up abusing me. So it's not what you say, it's how you behave. Like they say, people may forget what you say to them, but they rarely ever forget how you made them feel. So simple for me. If your current space, your work is not allowing you to enjoy things in your life you feel are important, your church life, your religious life, your photography career, ask yourself, which is more important? Where do you want to be in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? If your work life is affecting your health, is it that important? If your social life is doing serious damage to your professional life because you're out every night, or because, you know, all day you are taking calls because of your engagements as the secretary of the Mountaineering Club and the secretary of the Rotary and whatever other positions. It's a question of finding what works best for me. And now two of us can have the same answer. For some people, they will wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the golf course. 10 o'clock, they'll be sitting at their desk and nobody's complaining. Other people will be at their desk at 6 a.m. and at 6 p.m. they're still at their desk and everybody's complaining because they're not productive and they're annoying human beings because they're not balanced. That's it.
Thank you. Before I invite you to give your closing remarks, I'd just like to ask perhaps a question on my end. With the change of generations, of course, from baby boomer to Gen X, to now actually we have the Gen Z at the workplace, and also the Gen Alpha is coming to join soon, or they're already joining the workplace. And also looking at perhaps now realizing that in terms of disabilities, we also have neurodivergent disabilities that are not necessarily visible like physical disabilities. What then are your thoughts on the future of work-life balance, considering that now how generations view work and how generations have been trained to approach work is different, and considering that, of course, most of the owners of business, as it were, are of the other previous generations, what in your interactions can you say we can do to embrace coming generations, and also thinking about persons with disabilities that may not always be visible? Sometimes we have ADHD and other disabilities. Perhaps what is your comment on that? And then Esi, you can give your closing remarks, and then we can.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there's a conversation that is long overdue, that that is how different generations view work. I keep telling my peers when we meet for, lunches or having a drink, it's all very well for us to, have our conversations and moan about our young lawyers. I'm sure they're doing the same wherever they are, whether they are 1 year post-qualification, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So unless we have conversations between the different generations, then we are always going to have these tensions. I'm not suggesting a conference. I'm simply saying at our own small levels, find out from individuals, what works for you, and listen to what I have to say. And that way, and for me, this conversation is very much in its infancy stages. I try to ask people, how can I support your development? And trying to stop words from coming out of my mouth. I mean, I keep telling people, I don't want to be, I can't use a stair, I can't go upstairs on a Friday at 4 o'clock because there's a stampede out. We need to have these conversations. For the conditions which are not easily recognizable, we need to start creating the environment where people can find somebody to talk to. I don't have the answer, but I always tell people, in my office, there's a HR manager. If you think I as a partner, if you think an associate, if you think and there's nobody else, go and anonymously tell them. And, it doesn't always work, but you get to learn strangest of things through these channels. And sometimes we have to be our brother's keeper. I've seen situations where people have brought to light things about others anonymously, and that way the situation is addressed. But as long as we live in our silos, and I am as bad as the next person, as long as we all assume that they must know I've only got 5 years experience, they must learn to smell the coffee and know that my feedback means they are not developing, then we're going to have challenges. It's important that we find a way of having these conversations, and the sooner we do this, the better, and the more our organizations will thrive, however small or large they are. Last word. Yes. For me, because it's where I am at in my life, wherever you are, learn to unplug, learn to switch off. The money may be excuse for not doing it. But I'll tell you what, I know people who, I know somebody who I met in their 80s. I asked him, why do you still go to work every day early in the morning and come back in the night? You could easily afford to sit in your garden and just enjoy nature. You could even afford to buy 10 new top of the range cars from what you've done in life and tour different parts of the country in a different car. He didn't get to buy most of those cars, but he didn't live long enough to enjoy them. So unplug and be the best professional you can be when you're working, but be the best social you can be. I tell people I enjoy my work when I focus on it. I put my head down, but trust me, if we meet socially, I enjoy that immensely too. There's a time and place for everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kiragu. You said you're not pressed about the senior council. So thank you so much for your presentation. I think it is more so, aside from us learning from you, it has also been an hour where we really have had to reflect on how we approach our lives, and also looking at the end of the conversation, where now you've told us what you regret, what you'd have done differently, and also what we can also learn from others. So the power of human connections, the power of learning how to prioritize what works and what does not work. And also, more importantly, I think the one common theme has been, at every stage, we must reevaluate, we must stop, introspect, and think about what we are doing at the moment and seeing what balance is. And we can change. It's never too late to change. So that at this juncture, I'd like to thank fellow colleagues for logging in, and of course for your questions, for your comments, and specifically those who've also shared their views. And Senior Council, again, we look forward to welcoming you, and we look forward to also meeting you socially. As you've said, we'll see the non-litigator, and today's session has been quite refreshing. On behalf of the CPD Committee and the Law Society of Kenya Council, I extend my gratitude for accepting our invite, and we look forward to interacting more. At this juncture, I'd like to close this webinar, and I look forward to seeing you colleagues, and kindly reflect on work-life balance. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.